Hello everyone, sorry for the delay and thank you for joining me on this webinar. So I'm Pierre-Nicolas, I'm the co-founder and CTO of Picsellia, a French AI and machine learning startup based in Toulouse. So this is our first webinar and the first one of a series because we will now start to make them more regularly. And this is the first one because we are proud to release today the new version of our platform, which is more focused on MLOps and so machine learning operations, and more precisely on CVOps, so MLOps applied to computer vision. As you know that we already are an end-to-end AI and computer vision platform. We, with the new version, will go further and beyond this with all the MLOps features needed to deploy models in production. So today's webinar, to introduce you with all the new features and the platform, we have prepared a little use case with some laboratory in Toulouse, so where we are based. And I will showcase to you. So we recorded a video of the platform and all the processes because some events and some steps such as model training can take some time. So don't worry, I will broadcast the video, but every commentary will be live from me, and you will be able to ask your question at the end of the webinar. So it will last for approximately 20 minutes. And we will have a little Q&A time at the end where you will be able to ask every question that you may have, and I will try to answer the best I can. So just to introduce our today's use case, I will share some news, share with you, sorry, some photos. Let me just share my screen. The use case that we managed to work on, and we are lucky to have the opportunity to work on this use case today, comes from a laboratory in Toulouse called the CRCT, which is the Center Research in Cancerology in Toulouse. And we have collaborators that works there that spend a lot of time when doing their thesis and research. They are spending a lot of time not really on their research and trying new processes or trying new ideas, but when they are doing their research, they spend a lot of time counting, for example, some cells in their photography. To give a bit more context about the use case, so they have some microscope and they are studying the propagation of some cells, so cancerous cells, and how some other cells that are natively in our body that are called fibroblasts are helping those cancerous cells to propagate. To measure the propagation, so what one scientist can measure today without the help of AI is the global fluorescence. So by activating some enzymes in the cells, they can monitor the global fluorescence of one images. But this fluorescence must be reported to the number of cells in the photo in order to have significant results, of course. Just for you to know, just counting the cells, so as in the photography I am sharing with you, counting the cells can take one scientist from 2 to 3 hours to 10 to 12 hours a week, which is a hell lot of time, and I'm pretty sure that they have a lot of better things to do. And when they shared with me this use case, I immediately thought that AI and most particularly computer vision could really help detecting those cells nucleus and automating the cells counting process, which would bring the nearly 10 hours process to something like 2 to 3 minutes for 1,000 of images. Now that you see what the data looks like, so just know that we don't have much data for this use case. We only have something like 30 images like this. So we will try to apply some smart technique, I'd say, to achieve our goal with not that much data. And we thought of this as a good starting point for our use case. And the main goal and the main scientific process that we'll try to follow is to train a new model. So this data set was suited for segmentation, but we will use it for object detection just to make the the use case simpler, and also because object detection, is suited for cell counting. We will train a model that will serve as base model on this data set, and then we will fine-tune it and also use it to pre-annotate our images and see how it performs. And this will be the goal of the demo. All right, so here we are on our platform. So more precisely in the data lake. This is the place where all the assets stored can be viewed, searched through, for example, by tag or other attributes. Here we have many more images than needed for our use case. So I'm going to filter only the images with the nature tag and only see the images from the nature dataset. So we also have the list view here that allows us to see the attributes and name, for example. So now we will select all those assets and create a version of a dataset that will contain the empty images. So let's call it empty images. So as it should be created, we can head down to the dataset right now. We can select it and go to the empty image version we just created. So we can see all the pictures previously selected with a similar layout as a data lake. So in a dataset, we can import annotation. As the nature dataset is already annotated, we will import its annotation into a new version of our dataset, where we will go right now. So it's called the first one. So here, we can visualize all the annotation that has been done by the scientist helping for the Nature article. So if we want to annotate the data, with this, you can like edit the annotation. You can see everything that has been done. So we can see that the work has been pretty correctly annotated. Okay, so now if we wanted, we could also filter our images by their annotation. For example, if we want to see all the images that have more than 20 cells annotated, we can use this filter and it narrows down the number of pictures to 56. And we could use it, for example, to train another model with just a lot of cells annotated. So let's create a project with all those annotation and train a model with it. So we'll create a new project. Let's call it base nature sales. I think, yeah, I'm pretty right. Now we have to invite the team and validate the creation. So yeah, get down to it. What we're going to do is to attach the data set we just created with the annotation, and that will be the source of the experiment that we'll create. So this is, so let's call it V0, and choose in our model hub, so this is our model registry, an efficient D2 model that is suited for object detection. And we will keep the base parameters, it embed, because they will be good enough, select our dataset and create it. So this is our experiment dashboard, quite empty now, but we can see that every resources and parameters are like nicely set up. What we want to is now to launch remotely the experiment just by going to this tab and click the launch button. Once it's done, we'll just wait a few seconds. We can go to the telemetry tab where we can see the GPU server logs in real time and assess that our model is training correctly. So the training already launched. We can see that it's downloading the data from the data set. And after that, we will see some epochs. Okay, so we have different parts. Just waiting for the model to start training. It can take some tens of seconds sometime. All right, let's go. Okay, so it does seem that our models start training, which is great. So just waiting a few more epochs to be sure. And then I think we can leave to our dashboard. All right, so we can see that the dashboard now is not as empty as it was before, and we have the information that has already been created, such as the train day split and the loss that is logged in real time during the training. So now we are back a few hours later. It took like 3 hours, so you can guess why we recorded previously. So we can check that everything has been done correctly, no bug during the evaluation, nor the logs of the artifacts, so saving the files. And now we can see the dashboard that is filled with full of metrics, so evaluation metrics from the model and also loss, etc. And our model seems to have converged. What we will do is convert this experiment into a model that will be saved in our registry and that we will be able to deploy. So this leads us to our registry. So in the model page, where we can access the files, it has to retrain or deploy the training data, the original experiment. So let's click on deploy, and what we'll do is set a minimum confidence threshold to limit noise in our predictions. All right. So we just created right now what is called a deployment. So it is a deploy model, and what we want to do is some prediction. So we will use our Python SDK to call our deployment. With this simple method, we will authenticate and retrieve infos, and then just select a folder with some images that we want to perform prediction on, and send the prediction with the predict method. And the predictions can be seen live in the deployment dashboard. Sorry. So we can see basic information for now, just like latency and when the prediction has been made. And we send other images just to fill up the dashboard and have some better data. Okay, we can see that we have a mean latency of 210 milliseconds, which is pretty good for a first step. If we go to the prediction tab, we can see all the prediction that has been done by our model. So it should remind you the dataset tab. As we can see, our model is definitely detecting our cells, but there are a lot of noise in the prediction. So we'll have to clean this in order to retrain another model with those data. So first, we will set up what we call the feedback loop, which will be the data set that will host the prediction reviewed and used for another training later. Now we can review our predictions. So it's basically the same process as when you label the data the first time, except that you can filter the prediction by the confidence threshold and then edit the object to make the annotation, as neat as possible and also as fast as possible. So for the exercise, we will only review 2 images, so this one and this one, and then we will cut this, and every images will be reviewed. After that. Now that we are back to the dashboard, what's interesting, is that we have much more metrics than we had earlier. So, for example, we have the heat map of the prediction. We have all the full-fledged object detection metrics displayed here automatically on the review, which means that these are supervised metrics such as average precision, average recall, and you will also have some more information about errors and minimum average precision, etc. Also some information about the distribution of the data across the data set, the drift, etc., etc. So what we will do now is that we want to send new images that comes from the dataset for our use cases, and we want our model to pre-annotate those images that we will review in order to create a new dataset for training, and then create a model out of this. So once again, we'll go for the review. So we will edit the images the best we can. So thanks to the slider, it's kind of easy. This image is really easy. It has only 2 nucleus. This one is way more trickier because it has a lot of small nucleus, and the model is kind of struggling on this data. So we will spend a bit more time to review these images, but it's really important to understand like the importance, in fact, of the annotation, and they have to be as neat and as consistent as possible. So that's what we're trying to do here. Now that we are here, let me take just a few seconds to explain where we are. So if you remember, we set up in the settings of our deployment what we call the feedback loop, which is the host of the prediction that has been made. Our data set for our use case is composed of 40 images, approximately. So we sent only 30 through the model for them to be pre-annotated. We reviewed them all. So here you can see all the prediction that has been reviewed. So this is a dataset dashboard, not a deployment dashboard. And now we will be able to go back at the beginning of the process, which is we start from training data, and now we will want to train a new model. So let's get back to our video. The problem with the dataset is that we see that we only have 30 images and 700 approximately objects, which is maybe which is not enough clearly to train an object detection model. So what we have done, and this is the switch there, is that we use the script to augment the dataset using some classic image manipulation. So the images are randomly cropped, zoomed, and rotated in order to create new samples easily. So as we can see, we have a lot more images. If we go to the analytics, we see that we now have 18,000 objects, which is way more, but maybe our model will overfit on that. That's something we will discover during the training. So now that we have our data set, we will follow the same process as earlier. So we will create a new project, call it Fibroblast, because it's the name of our new cells. And in this project, we will, okay, just wait, attach the data set. Is this one indeed? Let's create an experiment, attach a model. Okay, we will choose for that the same model as earlier. So just to be clear, we didn't want to use our pre-trained model from the base cells in order to train this new one. This was not the goal. The goal was to use the first trained model in order to pre-annotate the data to help us go faster to the second iteration. But that another strategy would have been to use this model as a base architecture for our experiment. That's not what has been done here. That's why we are still using an efficient D2 architecture in order to train with the same parameters as we did for the first experiment. We select our data set, create the experiment. So once again, we will launch it remotely and go to our telemetry tab just to check that everything is running smoothly. So it seems to, all right. Okay, and now we are coming back a few hours later. We can see that we have several experiments because the first one didn't have the performances we expected. So here is our final experiment. We can see that the model seems to have converged. If we look at the logs, everything has run smoothly, be it file storage, artifact, evaluation, training, etc. So now, once again, we will export this experiment as a model for it to be stored in the registry, and then we will deploy it. Let's go. All right, same page as earlier. This is the model page for our new model. We're going to deploy it, set the same confidence threshold as we did. And we will add to our new deployment, lazy backburner. Let's go. One thing we will do differently is that before launch some prediction, we will set up our deployment a bit differently. So I will pause the stream for now. What we're going to set up is the continuous training, which is like the ability to watch trigger and to launch a simple experiment in our case, but we could also launch, for example, hyperparameter tuning, so several experiment at the same time, with some predefined parameters, base model, and dataset. So as we have all of our assets in Picsellia, it's really easy to do this. And in our case, so for the sake of the webinar, we want the continuous training loop to launch after 3 new samples has been reviewed. We will stick with we'll just change the number of steps so it will be faster to train. So now it's initialized. Another thing we'll do is that we set up a default alert that will be triggered on the latency of the model. So if the model goes beyond 100 milliseconds, we should see some alerts in the dashboard. Now we are doing some prediction with some original images that we kept on the side and see our models perform. We can already see that our model triggered our alert. So its latency is 2 to 3 times greater than 100 milliseconds. So it's normal. And now we are going to review 3 images in order to launch our continuous training loop. So here we go again. Hopefully there is not that much nucleus to reannotate. This one was easy. This one too looks great. All right. So now that we reviewed our 3 images, we can check that the training has been launched. So we can go back to the original project. And we do see that we have a new experiment running. So let's come back in a few minutes after the training is over. So let's get back to our affairs. Okay, just for me to explain, our experiment launched automatically in our continuous training loop. We came back a few minutes later. So the experiment is named after the name of our deployment, which is Lazy Bug Burner. And as we already have 2 experiments, it is suffixes by 2. And as it has a success status, so if we go now to our deployment again, we should see something new. And indeed, in this tab, so I will just pause so I have time to explain. So this screen tells us that we have a new model ready that is available from the continuous training loop and that can be deployed. So what we will do is that we will deploy it as a shadow model. So a shadow model is a model that will live concurrently and to better explain, like next to our prediction model, and they will both perform prediction on the same data, but only the first model, so the champion, will send the data to the client. So in this case, this is the Python SDK. So the shadow model will only be there to for us to understand if it performs better than the other one, and that's what we see next. So we deploy this model as shadow. If you wait for a second for the page to reload, we do see that we have our new model here in shadow. So now we can make some predictions, and it will automatically call the 2 model. Okay, let's check that. So if we refresh the page a little bit, we do see that we now superpose the latency, so the metrics for both models, and we don't have to do to add anything to the code, or everything is managed and done automatically by the dashboard and by Picsellia. If we take a closer look, so we saw that there has been some latency issues with the shadow model at the beginning, but that it seems to be okay with the new prediction, and that it's even lower than the original by a few tenths of milliseconds. All right, so yeah, our 2 models seems to perform. If we want to investigate, we can go to the chart and click on a particular point to see the corresponding prediction. So this allows us to identify and better understand outliers coming from the prediction. Okay. We can see that our shadow model seems to perform a little bit better than the older one, just judging by this latency. So what we will do once again is to review those images, and this will allow us to assess the quality of the prediction of the shadow model, because the same ground truth will be compared to the prediction from the original model and from the shadow model. And this will allow us to compute the supervised metrics for the two models. So we can see that we have new informations. We can see that we now have information on the drift of the data, which tells us that the distribution between old and new data is changing. And we have our supervised information, supervised metrics, such as precision and recall. We have information for both the shadow model and the production model automatically. So let's take a closer look at all the metrics, and we still have our image distribution. Everything looks fine. All right. So here, if we just base our decision based on the latency, we will choose to deploy, so to promote our shadow model in place of the champion. This means that it will replace the production model with the shadow model, and we can now see that our shadow model is no longer here, but is now in the real model. And I think that this closes the loop from training data to deployment and monitoring for computer vision, which is what we call CVOps. Thank you for attending. If you have some questions, we will head to our Q&A time right now and answer you live. Thank you. Thank you for your question. So we have a question from Jean-Luc Adam, who asks how to monitor and identify dataset drift. So that's indeed something that I went through a little bit fast during the cast. So what we do is that as we know the original training distribution from the dataset, as it is on Picsellia, when we will deploy the model, we will send all the images to a server that will use a Python package called alibi detect to measure the input distribution, so the distribution of the training data based on some features. So it's based on some neural networks such as autoencoders and some other technologies. And as we have new data coming through, we analyze those sets. For example, if I deploy my model today, in 1 week, I will have 100 new samples. That's an example. And we will compute the distribution of those 100 new samples, compare it to the training distribution. And we will see that in some cases, the two distribution, so in the curves, they will further them. They will get away from each other. And this would tell us that there are some drifts. And another related aspect, something that we see in the dashboard, but there were no data when I showed it to you, is the outlier that we compute on every data point, meaning that for each images, we compute the probability that it is an outlier from the original distribution of our training data. So I hope that it answers the question. And yeah, as I said, everything is done in real time. And for metrics such as the drift, as the model can be kind of heavy sometimes, and you have a lot of data, we sometimes compute it not for every prediction, but you can set up policies such as I want to compute it every 100 predictions, every 1,000. It will heavily depend on the rate of prediction that you have for your model. Okay, so someone is asking, that we mentioned that we used a small data set at first, and indeed it only has 30 images, so large images. That's why we allowed ourselves to make some random patches and crop, and we thought at first that it would be easy to augment. So to adapt to this situation, do you use specific model? I think, and it's even more true today than it was a few years ago, that it's not really the model that you will use that will change something about if you have some more data or if you have some small or big data set. I think that it is the work on the data that you have, and this is if you pay attention to all the data-centric movement that we have since a year or so, you will see that the quality of the annotation and the processes that you will find, such as original data augmentation, you can also use today generative algorithm in order to generate some samples. And those are, in my opinion, better options than using or trying to custom some models for just a few images. So because training data remains the most important aspects of the machine learning. If this platform and the tools we built speaks to you, and that you would like to try them out and see how they would be suited for your business, or if you have some further question, you can reach out to me mostly on LinkedIn, so at Pierre-Nicolas Tiffreau, or just search for Picsellia and you will find me. And it would be a pleasure for us to do some custom demonstration live this time of the platform to show you the whole capabilities and hopefully help you achieve your production machine learning goal. Thank you once again to attend, and until next time.